Hi, I'm your host, Haley Burns, and welcome to another episode of Birthing Beyond 35. This is the podcast for expectant and current mothers who are in their late 30s, early 40s, and who are ready and are thinking about having a baby. Today's guest is Julie from Miami. Julie shares how her positive thoughts and conscious manifesting led her to look for love at 40 and then have her first baby at 41. It's a really great episode about being really clear about your expectations in life and what you want and how to turn those thoughts into reality. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Joining me now is Julie. Julie, thank you so much for joining me. I do believe it is 9 p.m. on your time zone in the East Coast. So thank you so much for giving me this time. I understand your baby is down. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, what you do, and how you met your partner?
Yes, thank you so much, Haley. I'm very excited to be on the show and to share my story. So a little bit about me. I'm a first-time mom. I'm now 42, but when I gave birth, I was 41. I also conceived when I was 41. And before that, I was this sort of go-getter career woman, really focused on accomplishing things. I actually have a PhD in literature. I spent some time teaching at the university level. I started a business, and I was always doing athletic things like running marathons or going to the gym, just like always on the go, always in this kind of hustle way of being. And it became apparent when I was in my mid-30s that, I really want a family. I really want to have kids. But it just didn't seem like any of my relationships were working out. And I kept having birthdays and getting, older and older. I'm like, wow, this is, I don't know what to do. Like what's going on here? So before I met my husband, I was like, you know what, I really need to, get serious about this. If I'm going to do it, it's going to be now.
Okay, so I've got to interrupt. So when you're at this stage and you're saying that, your birthdays are passing and you're really feeling, I guess, like the clock is ticking, what kind of age are you at this point where you were really like, I need to buckle down and I guess really proactively try and find someone?
Yeah, I was maybe 38 or 39 when I started dating in earnest and really trying to find someone and actively going on dates and actively meeting people. And after some failed attempts in the late 30s, I then turned 40 and I was like, okay, this really is like this number. I don't know.
Oh, I know.
Sort of magical.
And I guess, how did you feel? Like, oh, I get it. Like, that's what this is all about. It's just, society's standards of where women should be at a certain age, and so many aren't because they're busy doing things. And how did you feel? Were you like, holy shit, maybe I'm going to be one of those women that just never has kids? Or like, did you live in a bit of a fear factor at all?
I felt a little bit of, I don't know that it was fear necessarily. It was more this, I just felt like really down. I was really starting to think like this might be it and I'm going to have to accept it. And I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to, go on knowing that I can't make this dream a reality. That those were kind of the thoughts, and they were really weighing me down. So it wasn't this sort of fear. It was really more like a little. It was very depressing. I felt depressed.
Is this because you were like comparing yourself, I guess, to friends, people you knew?
It wasn't so much comparison to other people. Most of my friends were either childless or single, and I really wasn't focused on what they were doing. I just knew in my heart, I knew in my soul that I wanted a family. I wanted to find my person, and I wanted a little person that was part me and part my partner that we could raise and just have more love in my life. That's what I wanted.
How did you get to this wonderful step of meeting the father of you now? Sorry, tell us about your baby, boy or girl?
It's a little girl. Her name is Carmen.
So how did you meet Dad?
I decided, I guess I was 40 and a half. I don't know if adults actually count in half years like little kids do, but I was 40 and a half and I was like, let me get online. Let me just see who's out there. Let me give it one more shot of this online dating experience. And So I created a profile. I started swiping and trying to meet people. And then I came upon this one profile and I was like, okay, this guy looks kind of handsome and he's got something cool written on his, description. And let me just give it a shot. Let me, reach out and start a conversation and see what happens. And we really hit it off in our messages back and forth. And then we decided to meet up, go on a date. We had a lot of chemistry. We had a lot of things to talk about, and it felt like a really promising connection. Mm-hmm. He asked me right there on the first date, like, do you want kids? And I was like, mm-hmm. Yes, I do. And I was really pleased that was something that he wanted to talk about from the first moment. It seemed like a priority for him. It seemed like a dream of his. And he was actively trying to find someone that he could love and to bring life into the world with. And we continued to spend time together, got to know each other. And we started having conversations like, let's make this happen. Let's put a life together. Let's see if we can conceive and try to make it happen. So it was a very romantic
courtship, I guess would say. Okay, so let's.
Yeah, it's very romantic.
What's the timeline here? How soon were you really talking about? Let's do this. Let's try and make a baby. How long had you been together?
We had been together less than half a year, so it was a few months.
Which is fine because people at 25 sit there and get pregnant very early if they found the one. I get that.
Yeah, and we were already in our 40s, and so we were like, what are we gonna wait around for?
Amazing.
We're not 25 anymore, and let's go ahead and make it happen. So we actively worked on conceiving, I would say, 3 official menstrual cycles.
And third one, you nailed it.
Yeah, on the third one, I missed a period, and I waited a few days. Took a pregnancy test, and sure enough, it was positive.
That must have been amazing feeling that. As you were, I guess, growing up and as you were getting older, were you ever concerned that perhaps maybe your AMH levels were down? Had you ever tested your fertility or done any hormone testing?
Before I met my husband, before I decided, let me just get back on online dating and see what I can do, I actually reached out to a fertility specialist or a fertility clinic. Just to see, I just wanted to see where I stood. Like, oh, here I am, 40 years old. I've got this dream in my heart. I have it in my soul. And what are we dealing with here in terms of my body and my capabilities? And so I went through this whole round of testing. I had to go in on, there's this one thing like, oh, on your second day of the period, go in and get your blood work done. Or at this point in your cycle, we're going to see if your fallopian tubes are open. And we're going to, from there, we're going to do this other test and this other test. And I only did one blood work, and we did see the fallopian tubes. And after that, I was like, okay, I think I'm okay. I'll just go for it. I'm not going to do any IVF now. Maybe I can meet somebody and maybe this will work. So, but I did do some testing just to see where I stood.
I guess, you felt confident, I guess, it's worth a shot. So was there anything, I guess, leading up to this point you were doing nutritionally or being mindful of?
Definitely, I was mindful of my nutritional intake, and I worked really hard to make sure I was getting the right foods and, lots of micronutrients, a good balance of macronutrients. I wanted to make sure I was getting nourished. I wasn't drinking during this period. No alcohol whatsoever. And I was exercising a lot and doing lots of things like meditation, yoga, and helping my body to be relaxed and limber and ready for conception.
So here you are, you've got this magical moment, you're fallen pregnant. Where is your mind at this point? Are you feeling incredible and very confident about your prospective journey? Is there a little bit of concern because of your age? How are you feeling mentally straight away?
I was elated as soon as the pregnancy test showed positive. I thought, wow, what a miracle and how fortunate we are. But then again, I was like, but no, I worked hard. I made sure I was very healthy, and I found a person that was also healthy and wanted to do this. So I felt very excited. But in terms of my age, I didn't think that would really affect the pregnancy or the outcome.
I love that. Why do you think that was for you?
I think it was just my how hard I had worked at being healthy all of my life through my 20s, 30s, and then right there on the at the beginning of my 40s, I had just really worked hard, and I've always had the kind of mentality that whatever the narrative is about something, it doesn't have to be my reality. So if the narrative is, well, over 40, you're going to have this risk, or this is not going to work out, or whatever, I'm like, well, I'm going to see to it, if I can. I'm going to see to it that I have the best outcome that I can achieve. I'm not going to just lean into this narrative about risks and this is not going to work out. I'm going to make it work out.
That's awesome. That's amazing. I think I was pretty much the same kind of mentality. A little bit where we little bit before we decided we were going to start trying, I did the same thing. I was like, no alcohol. Started taking prenatal vitamins 3 months beforehand. Because a lot of people say start taking them beforehand. You don't just get pregnant and then just start taking them. Like, get your body truly ready. Maybe that was whether I got lucky or whether that actually had an effect on conceiving. And I think also what you touched on is probably, your partner's health. There's so much weight on the woman and how the women take care of themselves. And, it does take, biologically, it takes two people. Maybe that also helped because your husband was obviously looking after himself too. Okay, so let's walk through this. So how was the first trimester for you?
The first trimester, I did have some symptoms that were a little unpleasant. I mean, there was the nausea throughout the day. It wasn't just in the morning. It was just at these random times. Random smells would set me off. Some of my favorite foods, all of a sudden I was like, I can't even think about this. So I think it was just kind of normal symptoms. I did find myself needing to take naps. And yet at the same time, I continued my workouts with a few modifications to, minimize any discomfort or not do anything, ridiculous or, overextend myself.
And again, so you've had a really great first trimester. How was the second trimester for you?
Second trimester, I had a lot more energy. The nausea pretty much, it went away by week 10 or week 11, something like that. And at that point, I was like, okay, well, I'm showing. I have to actually get some clothes that are appropriate now. I can't just be running around in these cutoff tops and other things that I wore, when I had more of a waistline. So it was more at that point, just kind of settling into, this is what my body looks like. Here's how I need to continue to work out and continue some modifications, to stay strong and flexible without overextending myself. And it was then that I really started to do some research on the upcoming birth. So I started to get into the mindset in addition to taking care of myself physically.
Genetic testing, did you ever do that?
Yes, we did do that. Everything came back normal. We found out it was a little girl. And, I was just very pleased with that and just so excited, that things were, things were moving along and they seemed to be going in a really positive, healthy direction.
I know when I did that genetic testing, I think that was my biggest worry because I'm like a deep diver on the, I'm like, obviously like my background was like reporting and researching. So I was like I couldn't help but look at like statistics and, seeing, the risks and obviously being older, there's a higher risk. And I remember just the relief when those results came back. Did you ever have any mild concern or you just felt you're in a really good mindset and felt good?
I felt good. I had a really good mindset about it.
I wish I was like you.
I mean, I still had a little bit of like it is possible that something might show up that we're not prepared for or that we didn't, necessarily want for the baby. And if that happens, well, we're still going to proceed. We're going to make the best of it. But I didn't have any sort of overwhelming worry. I wasn't fixated on it during the day. I wasn't calling, the doctor saying, okay, did you get the results? Did you get, I wasn't doing anything like that.
Okay. Well, amazing. Okay. So you're now, I guess we're into your third trimester. What is your, I guess, I don't want to say birth plan because it's such a terrible term because it never goes to plan, but what were you kind of envisioning for yourself?
I knew from even before conceiving that I wanted a natural home birth. And so during the third trimester, that was when I really doubled down on my research and readings. into how it works physiologically. My husband and I took a birthing class. I was reaching out to, I had online access to doulas and midwives for consultations. I was enrolled in a service through my husband's insurance. And so I was asking all these questions and doing everything I could to learn about birth and like, how does this work? And I had my heart set on that for a number of reasons. At the top of the list, I had read and researched that hospital births usually result in more interventions, just more and more interventions, one right after the other. I had also watched a lot of natural births on YouTube, and I saw these women who were just having babies
the way that everybody did for thousands and thousands of years.
Exactly. And I also liked the idea of being in a very calm and safe setting with just my husband and our midwife. Or, when I was thinking about this, we didn't have a midwife at the time, but it's like, yeah, I just want a midwife here and my husband and, peaceful, serene ambiance. And then the baby comes into the world and here we are all together and we don't have people buzzing in and out with things that they say they need to do.
Yep, they got to check there. I mean, look, I get it. Like it's all safe and they're doing it to be safe and it's a medical thing, but I understand that. Okay. So this is what you wanted. How did it go?
Okay. So I was in week 39 and I was kind of getting a little bit nervous at that point. Like, am I going to go beyond 40? And then, is my provider, what my midwife, what is she going to say? Is she going to, still allow me to go through with it beyond 40 weeks? There is a law in Florida that says that beyond 42 weeks, I wouldn't have been able to have a home birth with my midwife. At that point, I would have needed to go to a hospital. So I did start getting nervous. I didn't want to go beyond the deadlines. So I did get a little bit nervous. But luckily that week, I went ahead and in the middle of the night, actually it was around 4 a.m. I went ahead and just lost my mucus plug and I was like, oh,
I always wanted that. I never got that.
And then I started having some contractions, very mild. I forget the intervals of how far apart they were that early on, but they definitely were contractions. And that sort of slow buildup continued through the morning. I wasn't able to get any rest from 4 a.m. onward. I was just too excited.
Just up and about. Were you rolling on the Swiss ball?
No, I tried to stay in bed, and let the sun rise at least. And, my husband and I were sort of tossing and turning, pretending to sleep, but we weren't because we were excited.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But then, it became apparent like, okay, let's start the day. And so I was starting to record the intervals of the contractions at that point. And, but it was still very slow going. I let my midwife know and she was like, all right, well, keep me posted. We had an app where I was putting in the contractions and she was able to see it on her end. So, she was informed. The morning then turned into the afternoon, by which time I had watched a couple of movies. We had gone out and gotten
breakfast. I can't believe you left the house. Or were you like just walking around the corner to the cafe kind of thing?
Yeah, it was just walking around the corner to the cafe, really. And I kind of wanted to do it just to kind of move around a little bit and keep my mind
busy,
relaxed.
And I guess preoccupied.
Yeah. The midwife came over and kind of assessed early on just to see what was going on. And she was like, you know what, this is still, you're still just hanging out. I will be
So when you're saying obviously
posted.
assess, you haven't really dilated yet?
No. And I can't remember if that first visit, if she even checked. I think she looked at how I was acting and she was like, this woman is not in active labor. Yeah, I was like, when she came over the first time, I was very chipper and I was having a conversation and, I would just kind of like pause and breathe through a contraction, but it wasn't nearly
intense
time for anybody to be doing any checks. So that continued and then it started to get more intense. I wasn't as chipper, but I was still kind of participating in conversations and moving about, having snacks, going to the restroom. And then the midwife came back and she was like, okay, things are more serious now, but you still have a ways to go. Just by the looks of you still have a ways to go. I can't remember when she started seeing about the cervical dilation, to be honest. A lot of those details kind of got lost. as the labor wore on and I was really focused on my part, which is to stay relaxed and to breathe and move and things like that. I couldn't tell you what time it was. I could tell I think it got dark well before it got super serious.
It's so funny because at the time it's so raw, and I wish like those first days I just wrote everything down in my notes just so I had it all. Like to try and recap. It's like, when was that again? Yeah.
Exactly. I am actually trying to write it down, but I forget a lot of things. Okay, so then I'm in active labor. I have. So
are you still like within the first 12 hours now, or have you moved over into the next day overnight?
It was night. I think that 12 hours had passed. So if it was at 4 a.m. and then it got dark around 5 p.m. And that's when the midwife, I think, came back over 5 or 6. Beyond that, it started to get really serious. And I did have some cervical exams. And she was like, you know what, you're dilated, 4 centimeters or 6, things like that. She was like, okay, you still have a ways to go, but you're making a little bit of progress. So it was a lot of,
could you, I guess you couldn't really sleep because you were in a little bit of pain with the contractions. So what were you kind of like doing in this period of, darkness and overnight?
During the night, I was trying. So let's imagine the contractions as waves, like big waves. I was trying not to get subsumed and drown.
What was your pain? Let's say, okay, how big a wave were we talking here? 5 out of 10. So, what's your pain threshold like at this point?
I was getting to the 7 or 8, and I thought that I had hit, the top.
But did you feel like because I think like because you're strong with your workouts. I feel like you would almost treat this like, okay, we're going to do another set here, and you just mentally get through it, and it's, then that wave passes. Is that how you kind of were treating these contractions?
Yes, up until there definitely came a point, I suppose it was the transition stage of labor, where the pain was, it felt like it was beyond me.
Wow.
And I was exhausted because I hadn't slept, and I probably had not had enough snacks
to sustain your energy.
Yeah, to sustain my energy. I hadn't slept. I hadn't really rested. I had been really excited the whole day, and then
your adrenaline's going, and you've crashed.
Yeah, it was just taking a lot of energy to get through individual contractions, and I still had hours more to get through. So the whole experience was 25 hours, and the last 5 hours of it, I was pushing. Where were you?
So what was your setup? What was your guys' vision of where you would give birth? Were you over the toilet? You talk me through it all.
All right. So I wanted to do it in the living room. I had read that pushing on one's back was not really
read that as well. Yep.
So I had this idea of like, well, I'm just going to, either squat, or I'm going to be on my hands and knees, or maybe I'll be on my side or something like that. I'm just going to get in whatever position I feel like I need to be in at the moment. That was my idea. So I was in the living room. We also had a birth pool that I got into for a little bit until my midwife was like, you know what, I don't really think that this is working. Maybe you should get on the bed and let's try some positions there. So I was there for a little bit. I was also on the toilet for a little bit. There were a number of places in the
a lot of locations.
Let's
try this room.
Different positions. And ultimately, I did have to do the majority of the pushing. The successful pushing, I did have to do it on my back.
Yeah, holding yourself up, squatting, that's, using a lot of your energy again, your muscles having to hold yourself up. It's like isometric, basically, just a lot of hard work. Okay, so talk us through that. Let's talk to the point where you've got into active labor.
Well, what I can remember is just a lot of pushing and being frustrated. And finally, at some point, or let me go back. I remember wanting to push, and the midwife saying, I don't think you're dilated enough yet. And you haven't, your waters have not broken. So you need to hold off. And I remember that feeling just really frustrating, to have this sensation of wanting to bear down. And here's this surge coming, and I want to do something. And it's probably not a good idea. There did come a moment where I remember the water breaking, and there was this sort of release. And at that point, the midwife, I don't remember how far I was dilated at that point, but she was like, okay, let's push. Let's just go ahead and push.
And you're like, yes, I have manifested this for so long.
It was 5 hours.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's a lot.
It was 5 hours of pushing. Wow. And just little tiny movements on the part of the fetus. And I remember just using all of my strength, all of my might for each one. There were a couple of moments when in between contractions, I sort of stopped breathing, like my body would just stop doing anything. And
would that affect the baby's heart rate?
Yeah. Yes. And the midwife and her assistant were like, okay, Julie, you need to breathe. And I was like, but I can't. They were like, but you have to. And I was like, okay.
Like it's like the biggest thing they say when you're doing a workout class, is keep breathing. Don't forget to breathe. When you're just so tense and you're just holding on to a moment and trying to do this and you do not breathe.
Yeah. And it's interesting because breathing is for the most part unconscious. Yeah. You just do it. And but during those moments, I had to make myself do it. I had to force the air into my lungs, and then I had to force it back out, and I had to do it again and do it again. And I didn't want to, but I had to.
Had you done much research or thought about, which kind of breathing techniques you wanted to do, or that's something you didn't really kind of explore?
I had looked into it, and I had done a little bit of practicing using some YouTube videos and watching people do it. But I think when it really came time to, okay, now it's my turn. Now I'm in labor. I don't think I don't think I drew upon any strategy. I think I was just trying to do what I was told. I just wanted to go hurry up and get this fetus out and let's move to the next part of my life.
So tell us about that. Tell us about those final pushes.
The final 5 minutes, that's what I remember the least, I think, out of all of this, because I was so spent. So what I'm telling you is half a little bit of my scant memory and half of what my husband told me after the fact, because he remembers all of it. So there came a point when they were like, okay, we can see the head. You just got to keep going. You're doing it. Your baby's almost here. So they could see her crowning. And then I pushed and my baby's head emerged, and they were like, and then the contraction stopped and I didn't push. And so I remember maybe the sensation of okay, there's a little human head.
Did you do the mirror thing? Did you put the mirror down there so you could see?
No, I was not in a state of mind.
Probably it would be too overwhelming. Oh my God, this is real. This is happening.
I do think I put my hand down to feel her.
How did that feel?
Bit. I don't remember. I
So when you say you're just so out of it at this point, you're just beyond exhausted, just overwhelmed almost. Just almost in and out of consciousness, almost subconsciousness.
A little bit, yeah. I was just a lump of flesh that was doing this primal thing. That's what I was. I wasn't really myself, if that makes sense.
I think it's beautiful. It's amazing.
So then another contraction came, and I pushed through it, and then this little slippery body sort of emerged, and then somehow this little body came to my chest, and my arms were shaking, I almost didn't have the strength to hold her. But I remember feeling relief and just wow,
you did it.
Here she is.
I'd love to know what the percentages of women who want natural births at home and actually get to have them. I can't imagine the statistic is very high.
Yeah, I think I can't quote a statistic at the moment, but I want to say it's either 3 or 5% of it, from what I remember, either 3% or either 5%.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, that's incredible that you literally got your grand plan.
Yeah, I mean, it took a lot of work, and there were some moments where I was like, you know what, let's everybody pack up and let's go to the hospital.
Give me the drugs. Let's get this baby out and so we can have a nap. Okay, so what was your breastfeeding experience like?
Oh, it was wonderful, and it's still
awesome.
Fun.
It's amazing. How old is she now?
She's 9 months. Those first few days, it felt pretty instinctual, this tiny little human, tiny little mouth, and bringing her to my breast. She seemed to know what to do. I seemed to know what to do, and I remember offering her to be able to nurse in, many different moments. I didn't have to follow some sort of a schedule that the doctor prescribed, like, okay, every 2 hours. I was like, well, why don't I just do it when, I
feel
have
she
the
needs
instinct?
it. Yeah.
And it just so happened it was like, very often, I think, at least every hour, if not more often. And I really, really enjoyed doing it. It felt like this, I don't know how to describe it. It just felt like this miracle that I had always wanted, and I didn't really realize it until it came time to do it. I was like, this is part of my destiny. This is part of what I was meant for.
That's so beautiful. Okay. I have to say, like, for any woman listening to this right now who's been in a similar situation like you, who, were 38, 39, they're bordering on 40 and thinking, I need to, I would love this to happen for me. What advice or what would you say to them to kind of, don't just think that it's not going to happen?
My advice would be to really sit down and get very clear on your goals. If you really want this, if this is part of your destiny, if this is what you want out of your life, get really clear on your goals and think about the actions that you're going to take to get closer to those goals. And for me, it was, I want to meet a person with whom I can see myself doing this with. That was a major step in the goals. If you already have your partner and you all are working on it, maybe part of the actions that you take are to clean up your diet, look into what kinds of nutrients will support fertility, what kinds of supplements, what kinds of lifestyle changes, and make it happen. Take action every single day and get incrementally closer to having your body be ready. Also work on your mindset. Of course, we can't on a scientific level prove that mindset will affect your pregnancy outcomes or your conception success rates, but really thinking about yourself as a mother even before you become one, visualizing the possibility that this can happen, really thinking about that will it will play its part in creating the conditions that enable motherhood and to enable conception and a healthy pregnancy and a successful birth.
I believe that too. I believe in the power of manifestation. I know it is hard for some people to, you don't necessarily have to stare in the mirror and be like, I will be pregnant. You don't have to go that far. But I think if you just truly just are aware of what you're putting in your body and just manifesting and just seeing that, I think it, like you say, it does play into a part of the end result.
Yes, absolutely.
And just quickly, just before we let you go, tell me about your Instagram, Eating with Babies.
Eating with Babies is a new venture. So I've always had a very keen interest in the role of nutrition in health in general, not just for motherhood or pregnancy. And I've always wanted to study it on a more formal basis. So I'm actually working on a certification in nutrition for mothers-to-be, for new mothers, and for babies. And I created this Instagram so I could go ahead and post some content related to my interest in nutrition, and to support women, to support babies, and all of us moms and babies and families have confidence when it comes to choosing nutritious food.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great account. And yeah, I think it's definitely one thing. It's like, you spend all this time preparing for birth and then it's just like, okay, thank you, bye. That's, you leave the hospital, you're on your own and that's it. And suddenly you just, because you're so exhausted, you literally are just like, where is any food that I can start giving this baby, like solid foods, for example. It's just like, there's a banana, there's this, but not many people have the time to sit and research and know which are the best vitamins and which foods are having the best nutrients for their children. So it's a very helpful account that you have there for everyone. Sure. Do you have any interest in trying to give your daughter a sibling?
100%. I would absolutely love to conceive as soon as possible.
Wow, you're amazing. Are you actively going to start trying soon, or do you have a bit of a window where like, hey, or are you letting your body repair, for example? A lot of people say, give yourself a year and a half before you start trying. What are you thinking?
Well, yeah, I would love to conceive as soon as possible. It's to keep track of my cycles right now while I'm still breastfeeding is a challenge because they're not regular yet. My baby is starting solids, so she's increasingly taking in food and nursing less and less, but she still does nurse. And so the hormones are more in support of the breastfeeding at this point than they are of supporting regular cycles and ovulation. So, but the vessel is open. So I'm, ready and waiting and,
awesome.
but still supporting my baby at this point. But I think I'm healed. I didn't have any real recovery after giving birth because it was successful in terms of no tearing, no major complications or anything. So I'm back in business as far as I'm concerned.
That's awesome.
Just waiting for my periods to get back to normal.
That's amazing.
Thank you very much, Haley. It's been a pleasure to share my story, and I really look forward to more stories on Birthing Beyond 35.